everybody. Welcome to the BellaConnections podcast. Today, my guest is Kostechka. Apologies if I totally butchered that. That's just, you have a great name, and I just love Kyle. Kyle is an amazing human, all around absolute badass marketer. He's actually the senior business development manager over at ClickBank. He's responsible for over 200 million in affiliate transactions. They manage over 100,000 affiliates there. He's just a affiliate marketing expert all around, and also a trusted partner to some of the top experts in the direct response space. I know he's worked with a lot of mutual clients and just people that I really look up to as well as admire and love working with and experiencing all Kyle has to offer. So he specializes in revenue growth, and he partners with a lot of them in helping these affiliate offers take off, taking a look at their sales pages, what's working, what's not, the psychology behind it, and helping them really optimize things. So he's also an amazing thought leader and podcaster. They have a podcast called Affiliated. So go ahead and check that out. He'll give you even more insights and tips there. And a special extra prompt there is check out the one on Kyle to learn a lot more about him, because he's a badass.
Well, I was going to say you need to go with your episode, because that's the real gem, is when Michelle was on our podcast. So she is the best. You're the best. Thanks so much for having me on here. And you did butcher it, but it's okay. There's far too many consonants for a last name. It's Kostechka. The CH is there just to throw you off. I don't know why it's there. I just think somebody at Ellis Island was drinking too much, and they're like, just get this Russian out of here. Let's just keep moving on and just put some extra letters, as he might have sneezed as he tried to talk. So that's where it comes from.
Make it feel like you're sneezing while you're trying to say it as well. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Like,
yeah, right.
Hello, wake up.
Exactly.
The room, everybody. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm
excited to be here. It's great.
Yeah, we've connected in so many amazing experiences and ways. I really appreciate you bringing me on your podcast. We've met in several events and all kinds of stuff. I'm curious, how did you get started in the direct response and digital marketing space?
By total accident. It was actually a total nightmare for me when I bumbled into this space. So that being said, I actually think my journey as a marketer started when I was a little kid. And it was actually because I was super shy, and I didn't know how to connect with kids. But I watched a lot of TV, and I would study like comedians or how they were able to connect with adults. So I always studied like cartoons, but I really loved watching like older sitcoms and things like that, movies, to see how actors would connect with adults. And then I started replicating that. And so I always did well talking to adults. And it just, for whatever reason, that's just my brain always worked. And like, I think the moment I really became a marketer, it's funny, I wrote this out of spite. So my journey as a marketer was because I was a little shit ass. So in 8th grade, I was kind of a shit ass always in school, but my 8th grade English teacher was just the hippiest of teachers. And for whatever reason, it bothered the hell out of me. It wasn't even that I disagreed with her. I just didn't like that she was forcing these opinions on us. And I was like, well, like hell, I'm going to be that way. So I became the most annoying, just like, she hated like corporate, capitalistic, money hungry people. And I was like, I'm going to be that person for you in class. And so I became obsessed with studying advertising and manipulation and all that stuff. And even wrote her last thing, like she hated me so much because I really was quite a shit ass. She talked about me in her other classes. And our final paper of the year, she said, I want you to write something that inspired you this year. And she said, and it could even be Kyle, because somebody in my other class asked about that. And I was like, I don't even know who that person was. So, but then I wrote in my paper that she inspired me to go into advertising. So I learned how lucrative it was to manipulate people to buy and do what I want. And after you showed me and told me all their evil ways, I felt that was my journey. And I did that as a joke, yet here I am today doing exactly that. Now, I don't think it's evil and manipulative, but funny enough, I did come from finance and accounting. So I was an accounting major. Started as a history philosophy major. So then I had a kid and it's like, shit, I got to make money. And so moved into accounting, which my uncle said, it's miserable, but you'll make a lot of money. And so I said, cool. That's why I chose that. I was good with numbers. Did accounting. I actually really did love accounting, but I would have been a horrible accountant. I worked for a company doing stuff where I'd evaluate fixed income asset portfolios for Fortune 500 companies and help with the reporting and accounting. It was great. Got me to go. I was able to go onto Facebook's campus and some other really cool tech companies, but they paid crappy. They paid real crappy. I had 4 kids at the time. Just had my 4th. So I needed money, and I asked them for a certain amount of money. They said, you did a great job, They did not give me that number. So, being the economist and dirty capitalist pig my English teacher thought I was, I said the only way to know your value is to go test it on the free market. Found ClickBank, didn't know what they did. I told them, like, hey, I'm really good at taking operations and compressing and condensing them down. Nothing about marketing, right? In fact, I can do that, but I'm not good as an executor, just a strategist behind how to do that. But anyway, so I started at ClickBank, figured out they did marketing. I went home and told my wife, I was like, I think I made the biggest mistake ever. Because for those that know that are in accounting, us accounting nerds, all we do is make fun of marketing majors, like, marketing majors, and just want to poop all over marketing. So I thought I'd made a big mistake. Read .com secrets, and I've always said that it felt like coming home. Like, it made sense to me. It was numbers, it was human behavior, and it was meshed together. And it just was that, like, the light came down, an angel tapped me on the head, and I knew that I was onto something. And from there, it's just been, I was just kind of addicted to it. I love studying it. It makes sense. And now I kind of call myself a business anthropologist. I just study business and influence across all sorts of categories, niches, and all over the place. Take those learnings and try and adapt it into my clients' businesses, my businesses, or anyone that I talk with. Because what ClickBank employs me to do is go talk to people and find strategies that'll make them more money. And oftentimes it goes through ClickBank, but it's not always going through ClickBank. I just try and do my best.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you are really you're really combining all the aspects of online business and marketing with the data and the numbers, but the human psychology stuff that you touched on too. And especially I really like that you your whole point is to prove that teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Watch me now. No, I'm kidding.
I know. It's funny because we probably get along with stuff, but she'd also hate what I do more than anything. So it's still, I get to be like, I'm living that childhood dream, really sticking it to her, right? I think every good marketer is sticking it to somebody. So mine was an 8th grade English teacher that never wore a bra. Damn it, keep your nipples away. Miss whatever, I can't remember your name.
And I love it. I love it. I mean, but it is you're trying to understand, and just the way that you're trying to understand and relate to other people. It helps so much in the marketing psychology of things and being able to understand what drives the behaviors that you're trying to achieve and all that. I know it. Yeah, some people can say it's manipulative, but like you said, it's not with ill intent. So I think that it can be done in a way that you are doing things to help people, and you're not forcing anybody to do anything. So I really love that you had that background in that psychology and the philosophy. I know you study a lot of different religions as well as cult philosophy and so much more. So
Yeah, I do love my cults.
Yeah. Who doesn't, right? Who doesn't want to be a scientist?
Yeah,
What is
maybe some
Scientology?
people in the cults might not love them. I don't know. I think there's some children, a part of the Children of God Church, that might say I don't like it, but it makes for good TV. I'll tell you that. One I'll add that I didn't mention, and I don't talk about a ton because I'm afraid what people say next. Politics is the other area that I do enjoy studying quite a bit. Not that I want to be a politician. I hate politicians. But I'm fascinated at the influence in the games that are played at those levels. They're very, very interesting. Hard to apply to marketing sometimes, though, because they could do things that no business owner ever could when you're a government and you want to drive political viewpoints.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a lot more reach there, but there is still that psychological factor in the end, and the persuasion, the influence, and how, you drive people to believe what you want them to believe and buy what you want them to buy.
Yes, exactly. I
Well,
love
with
it. It's the best
that,
part.
oh, yeah, what were you saying? Sorry.
I was just saying I love it. It's the best part of marketing. It's all the understanding human beings.
It really is. It really is understanding them. So what, with that background and all that experience, what would you say is something that really stands out to you when you're first looking at and supporting somebody in maybe their conversions are down or something like that? How do you first go into a page and start analyzing an offer or a product or a sales page?
Well, I'll take this. Amanda Dobson actually taught me this when I first started, but it's you always go to your headline and your lead. 80% of all your conversion rate is going to happen with your first impression. And it makes sense, right? If you even look at human beings, we always say first impressions matter most, and it's 100% true. The first thing you say is what matters most. And so immediately, if someone's struggling with conversions, the first thing you want to look at is the headline or the lead and understand what they're doing there. Now, a couple of things that I just think common mistakes that I see there. One of the biggest things I see is people don't understand that every good lead, every good headline, every good introduction to marketing has to have a paradoxical element to it. So that's always what I'm looking at. And what I mean for that is it has to sound something like, how could those two things exist? I'll give you a really good one. This guy's Johnny Robinson. He's got a great product that teaches people how to own a cleaning business by leasing. So you don't actually have to own a cleaning business. His pitch that he leads with is, have you ever wanted to own a cleaning business without ever cleaning a house? Which is paradoxical. How could I have a cleaning business but not clean? So immediately my brain pays attention because it doesn't connect. And you also have to understand why that works so well. Is human beings, when we're adults, human learning changes. So when we're little kids, paradoxical statements don't work on young children because everything doesn't make sense to them. So they don't have a basis or a bias to say that these two things don't connect. I always liken it to it's essentially looking at a sheet of untouched snow. That's a children's brain, right? But an adult brain looks like a cluttered library, just filled with books, like a hoarding house. We have all these biases and connections we have to make, and when we could break a connection with two things that are supposed to make sense but not together, it makes people stop and want to pay attention. So that's one of the first things I'm looking for. If you're not bringing some sort of drama or paradoxical thing, which we see working more and more now, particularly in scientific curiosity, that's one of the big things that I'll focus on. Next things too, it's like language. I always think the word, one of my favorite overly fancy words that I like to use, because this definitely happens, particularly if I start drinking. I get too fancy. I call it fancy talk. But verisimilitude, right? Are you speaking the language of your market? Is there verisimilitude in the actual copy and text that you're writing? Does it sound similar? Is that language matched up? And oftentimes that's another area where I really see mismatches. They're not talking to their market. One big area I see that missed oftentimes is lately has been in like AI, for example. People throw AI out and they're blitzing you with AI, but they're not realizing that the language of their audience by putting AI is actually not what you want to put in there. Most people, if you went outside right now, you went down to your local grocery store and you're like, hey, what's your opinion on AI? To the common person, most people don't have positive thoughts about it, right? They're not excited about it. Now, in our marketing world, we're like, everyone loves AI. It's the coolest thing ever. But most people are like, I think it's the devil. Isn't that where all the scams are coming from, right? They're wanting to be conditioned. It's like, if you talked with a marketer, you would have thought NFTs and crypto would have been the greatest thing ever known to man. We go to conferences, you would have thought it's changing everything. You step outside that realm, everyone thought it was like bullcrap, and it was all just, clown shows. So I only say that oftentimes I see people missing out, that they're not actually addressing the markets. We had I was in a group, in a CRO group. Amanda Dobson has a great mastermind around CRO, and I'm a part of it. And we had a guy that they had brought up an offer. And I said, well, we're looking for more like brick and mortar business owners. And they lead with this idea of AI. And it's like, you're totally missing the boat. If you say AI, their opinions on it immediately go, nope, don't want any of that. And they're really struggling in conversions. Strip that away, understand the language, what they actually want to hear. What does that individual want to see? So flipping it to now where it's like, hey, it's more results oriented, and it could be something like, get this thing that feels impossible, right? Because AI unlocks impossibility. You already have a built-in paradoxical statement. I'll give you like a made-up AI product that I want to exist because it would be great. But I like fashion, but boy, do I suck at it. So I didn't, like, my wife dresses, started picking out my clothes. It was really, really good. People are like, wow, Kyle, you dress well now. I was like, oh, that hurts. But I understand that I'm not connected with it. So my dream would be if you had a smart mirror and I could walk up to and I could load some sort of designer or buyer or whatever. It could scan and it could tell me, okay, hey, these are the outfits you're like. Here's what you should buy. Select this. It shows it on you. It picks it. And I could just buy outfits. Or even it knows what's in my closet. And I could say, hey, here's my mood. Here's what I'd like to do today. Now, if I was pitching that to somebody, I wouldn't say, hey, this AI mirror will make decisions for you. Ew. Instead, I'm going to say, would you like to never have to worry or guess about what you're going to look good in best ever again? You don't have to, without hiring a fashion designer, without even leaving your house. People are like, well, hell yeah, but you can never do that. That's what you want, right? That's going to bring me in because I instantly am like, this doesn't even make sense to me. Let me come in and want to talk about it. So that's what you really need with that paradoxical thing. You need to go to the actual heart of the pain that they want. And those are the things I'm really primarily looking at when something's struggling with conversion rates at the beginning, as those market pairings and things like that. I'll add one last thing to it as well. I find a lot of people are struggling with conversion rate. It's because they are not they're not innovating or being inspired. They're just replicating. And I don't be the RC Cola to someone else's Coca-Cola campaign, right? Like, find a way, like, you could be inspired, but that's where you ask the question, why? Why is what they're doing? So we obviously saw Hermosi break a Guinness World Record and done some amazing things. And we are now going to see a bunch of people bastardize what he did and not innovate, but just replicate it and create just a worse and worse version every single time of his success. None of it will get close. They're not going to break that record unless they lie or basically do it in a different way. And that's because what people end up doing is they're going to replicate what he did without understanding why he did those things. And you're just not going to get to the next level. So I would just tell people, first off, look, are you just bastardizing a version of something successful? And if you are, stop, rethink this, and ask, why did that work in the first place? And then innovate from the why, not from just replicating from what you see.
I love that. I mean, everything that you're saying from beginning to end. First of all, the headline and the initial first impression. I hope that you don't have a bad first impression because I butchered your name in the beginning here. But
Luckily, we've met many times. And honestly, we'll all now have to share how Michelle and I met. I don't know if you remember this, but I remember it.
God.
It was a copy accelerator in Phoenix, and it was Steve Gunn and I were talking, and I love Steve. Steve's just one of the best. Love Steve. Steve, if you're listening, I love you. But you walked over, and he goes, Kyle, you have to meet Michelle. She is the only reason my business works. She is the fucking greatest, and just like gave you this huge thing. And so it was a great first impression. It was like, hey, who's this amazing person that Steve thinks is the secret to all success, which, by the way, she is, and has done it for other clients as well, as she unlocks all sorts of cool stuff. But no, your first impression's good. Don't worry about it.
well, I very much appreciate that ego boost there, and I'm very grateful for you and Steve and hearing that. So thank you. But also that you're you're the very secret weapon that we're talking about in this moment too. Like, you're the secret weapon behind all of them. So I love it. And everything that you're saying, I would love the Clueless style mirror. Do you remember that movie Clueless back in the day?
Yeah.
And she had
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
Oh God.
With good old Alicia Silverstone. Yeah.
Yeah. If I had somebody else to pick out my clothes, I would do anything. If somebody else to shop for me, please.
Yeah.
And I know that's a big thing that you do too, is not shop for people, obviously. But your ideas.
Well, I hope not. No one wants that.
You're always out there throwing out ideas and supporting people in that way. So I'm curious. Between the ideas you come up with for people, as well as you're talking about a lot of the research on the market and the audience and how to speak to them, where do you come up with all of this? What is your kind of secret sauce and how these things work for you in terms of understanding the market, the audience, new ideas and angles to take with them?
Yeah, I mean, that's always a tough one, in that I think a lot of it just comes down to it's knowing self, right? I've always been a very introspective person. I mentioned before, I was the shyest of kids, which I know is weird to think about now because I'm just outgoing, crazy person. But as a kid, my parents were very worried about how shy I was. But I was a watcher. I observed. I've always sat back and tried to just see what's happening and then make sense through that. And it's one of the reasons as a kid I gravitated towards books. I was just a huge bookworm. In fact, my first grade teacher had to incentivize me to go out to recess because I would just sit in there and just read every book in the classroom. And what I always loved about books, it allowed me to jump in and understand a different perspective. And through that, I could then start to understand okay, the human behavior of that perspective, the way that people behave in these ways. And so what I've done in my life is I try and consume a very diverse group of things, diverse contents. It sounds crazy, but my wife thinks I'm nuts for this. I will subscribe on my only social media source is Facebook because I have to have it for work. But I follow the most liberal feminist sites that I could find and the most conservative sites that I could find, some libertarian ones. I try and get a variety of different interests and things like that. And then other things, I know this sounds dumb, but consume media from stuff that you don't understand and cultures you don't understand. And why that's so key. And also podcasts, I've always been fascinated with stories. And people's stories, human stories, fictional stories. Because I think what you start to see through all that is you pull out human behavior and human emotion, which where history doesn't repeat itself, but humans behave the same way over and over again. And so if you start to understand that, it could help you start to see the world through a different lens and a different context. And that's where, for me, I'm just always trying to look at that. I also, I hate small talk. I don't know if that's obvious in this conversation. It's like, he blew right past that, but I hate it. I like big talk. And the reason for that is I like to get to the core of what drives people, because then I learn a lot more. And then I take all those learnings and those contexts and I look at what's going on in the world and start adjusting that to things I see, or look at marketing and businesses and say, okay, if this is your market, what other markets are there? What other angles could be? And if I had to put my superpower, was a hard thing honestly, this is a hard thing to deal with when I was young, because it was just, I could be very empathetic. I have a supercharged empathy muscle that I could flex. Like the amount of times, like, I know this might sound really weird, but I've just been like, I've thought about experiences that other people have gone through and just really tried to take all that context and get to a point where I could feel the exact thing that somebody else is feeling, like, and just I'll bawl over something, not because the story's so sad, but I put myself in those shoes and I could channel those emotions. And I've always been able to do that. Even, I don't know why, it was always easy. It's naturally what I did as a kid, but it's been able to really help me understand that language of empathy, to connect into what somebody might be feeling. And through that, you could do that at mass and start to understand movements. And I'll kind of give you an example of one that I've been talking a lot about lately, that I think is like, I want people to pay attention. But it's in, like I said, what we see in the economy right now, there's some really big trends that people should be paying attention to. And I would say economically, and we also see behaviorally and culturally. We have a very diverse, I would say a very combative nature right now in American society, right? People just seem to want to be on one side of the extreme and yell in between often. And there's a lot of people caught in between. You also have to pair that with, we are coming off this pandemic where all these people had all this money, they had all this freedom, lots of relationships, even opened themselves up, right? And we saw this kind of period that was very peculiar, but we saw things like divorce rates go down during that time frame, which is a common trend. When the economy is good, people don't get divorced as much. Relationships tend to be better. But now we're seeing behavioral volatility. We'll see, like, the climate of the way people talk to each other has gotten very volatile. On top of that, we're seeing the economy. If you look at underlying factors, and this is probably just my economic brain and the finance brain understanding this, if you look at a lot of other factors, there's things that can make you think it's better than it really is. But if you look at a lot of buying trends, you look at consumer behavior, you look at the numbers of debt, you look at unemployment or what's happening in the employment realms, there's lots of factors that things aren't good, and people at least feel that way. So just to break this all down, a thing that I was thinking about, I was like, oh, look at this. I'm going to go check what's going on with search terms for divorce lawyers. Largest spike is happening right now that we've seen since 2009. Why that's significant? What happened in 2008? A huge financial collapse. What happened I would say 2024, we really saw the full scale of, I would say, the post-pandemic correction hit full force. We're now in year 2 of that, right? And so I would tell you again, just like, look at trends. What are you doing to address relationship products? How are you dealing with saving, procuring, or newly single individuals, or lots of products around that? I would start looking at that. And guess what? I don't see a lot of products addressing it right now because they're not looking at those behavioral trends. So I think the reason I could look at that is knowing history, knowing human behavior, knowing the ways that those stresses are on there, and then it could help you kind of start to predict, and I think maybe find different opportunities sometimes.
Yeah, no kidding. Like that, I mean, it's amazing, like, to have that insight and that I guess it's not retrospective, but just the insights that you're gathering from, past experiences and what you've seen happening with market trend and everything, and also being able to use your empathy to get into the shoes of people and really feel that, so that you're able to, make those conversion optimization tactics and tools that actually work really well for your client. I mean, you have supported them in like $200 million worth of sales. That's not a small number. That is huge. That is massive.
I think it's an old number too. I'm not going to lie. I think there's more than that at this point. But who knows? I haven't calculated in a while.
You're a badass, my dude. You're a badass. What would
I don't know about that. Those marketers are doing all the hard work. I just am a nudger. I just nudge and can come with some little things that sometimes work. But yeah, more than anything, I've learned about myself. I just really love to sit and think about these things and hope that those answers are correct. That's what drives me more than anything. If I could be a philosopher back in the day, I think I would have been all for that. Which was actually, I was a history philosophy major when I started out in school. So definitely that probably was my end goal, is to just be sit and read and think and then talk about thinking.
I mean, that's it sounds like the perfect position and role and just space for you to be in, and to have that like ability and support people in that, because we get so in our business and in like whatever product we're selling and everything, we think that we're doing so amazing, and then you have somebody come in with that bigger perspective, that's what your clients really need to see and understand. So I'm curious, like, can you give me some examples of like what you've seen working the most in the market nowadays? I mean, we did just have this massive Hermosi launch, if you want to break down the why behind that for us, or like tell us what you see working best with your clients. I'm curious.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things that we're seeing right now. And actually, the Hermosi, I haven't gone the full breakdown yet. I'm still waiting for the funnel thing, so I'm in the process of going through it. So lots of this is kind of cursory. I'll be honest, like, this is one thing, like, for as much as I love marketing, I sometimes consume less marketing than a lot of other, like, people in our business do, at least our very specific type, right? And I think, I just think because sometimes I like to not get too caught up in the same thing all the time. But like, so when I opened up my Facebook, I think it was like Saturday afternoon, and it was just Hermosi. Everyone was like, I'm shutting this down. This is done for the weekend. We're good. Just because I was like, I'll look at that later. That's just not right now. But anyway, it's just what's working right now. So a couple of things, and actually the Hermosi launch, there's pieces of this that really indicate very similar things. And I can't take all this. Ezra Firestone was at a conference that he said, and I agreed with him on this, but he said it so beautifully. He's like, we're now in a trust economy. Trust is what matters most. And so I'll just say this because there's a couple of things why this is so significant. We, over the pandemic, over the last 5 years, have seen a complete erosion in the traditional ways that we consume information and we trust information. And the problem with that, there's opportunity, but the problem with that is it creates a lot of people where we want to trust something. Most human beings do not want to think that much. They really don't. They want things laid out in front of them. They want it to be simple. They want to identify in some sort of communal way that just like, I'm not going to be alone, and just adopt ideas that are just told to be real around them. The challenge is that is very, very hard to do, and all the sources that are doing that, depending on your alignment and values or whatever, are being told that they're not real anymore. They're lying to you, right? We have this fractured trust. And so now, when I would say it wasn't as big a deal, there's a lot of people like, yeah, this sucks, but we had a lot of free capital, so I don't mind throwing my money around. I didn't need to trust as much, and I'd throw my money and almost buy and see what would work or how I could get trust. But now we see that the amount of free capital that people have has been constricted substantially, right? Cash flow in general, people aren't as willing to trust with dollars first. They want to see more of what you've done because they got burned so many times. And whether it's burned from other marketers, other products, or burned by the general, news or media or, pharmaceuticals or whatever it might be, something has burned them. It could just be they were Marvel fans. They're like, what did you do after Endgame, right? There's some lack of trust in their life from everywhere. And the worst part is finding trust now is so challenging. So people are just looking to almost give it to you. They just want you to take and give them all their trust so they just commit and buy in. But to do that, you have to start with more value and less cost. So, and if we look at the Hermosi book launch, how much was the Hermosi book?
I don't know. Wasn't it like $29? Well, I know that like I went to the page. It was $30 for the book. I went to the page like yesterday. I very much ignored everything going on over the weekend. I went scuba diving. I saw it on my calendar. I went scuba diving. I went to a housewarming party. I did everything.
Hell yeah, that sounds so much more fun. Yeah.
Monday morning, I open my email and it's just like a million Hermosis, and my team messages me and they're like, Michelle, what did you sign up for? What is this? Who is this? Why are they emailing us so much? And I'm like, well, it'll be great to learn from them. But I think what they did is the book was $30, but they had an offer where they're trying to get it out to more people. So, and I'm sure get a New York Times bestseller and all that other stuff. So if you buy 200, you get a credit for 200 of them for $6,000, and you can give them away, sell them, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, but of course there was a lot more that came along with that donation, as they once said it. So, but again, like the psychology on this, there's lots of really good things. But I think one thing that's really significant is the book itself was sub $30, and here you have what might be a $200 million launch, and there is a model to that. I don't ask that much for you to trust me, and I'm going to over deliver so much that you're not only going to say, you could say yes to the 29, because that's all I'm asking. But if you trust me after all I've delivered for you, by the way, there's 6,000, 18,000 as well that you could do. And you sell a bunch of those also. So I think that's one of the things that you really should shift for, is ask for less and over deliver more. That's a trend we're seeing. We've seen a rise of digital products. We're seeing a rise of a lot of offers that I know out there that have lower AOVs. But guess one of the trade-offs, and this is one of these marketing principles that I think a lot of people lost sight of. And I was seeing happening, and I'll say, then direct response and affiliate marketing over the pandemic, supplements and Nutra became the largest category by a substantial margin. There's a lot of reasons why, but it's just really, really, really big, right? It was so easy. It was just easy for a while. Nothing's really easy, but it was kind of easy. But what happened is it started getting a lot more challenging, and people started to almost get over inundated with the exact same stuff, and they kept asking for more and more and more. And so as the conversions went down, I think people started not wanting to spend as much money. We saw the economy constrict. So either the market was shrinking, paired with, I think, marketing tactics that were getting relatively stale. This market's shrinking. It's getting smaller and smaller, right? So it's harder to go after those individuals. And I think what a lot of people did is they thought, okay, well, I'm just going to try and get the AOV higher to offset my reducing conversions. It's not a smart idea, right? Really, that's just indicative of a smaller actual population. I saw the same thing in high-ticket BizOp. High-ticket BizOp, what they had to start doing, because they're like, man, our conversions got really, really challenging. So you either just double your prices, triple your prices, go after the same audience, but get way more out of them, right? Increase that AOV, or you just get really, really efficient in your targeting. So you're shrinking the market, but speaking to them more. What that tells me, though, is, okay, that's great, but you're missing the now growing bigger market, which doesn't want to spend as much money with you on the front end. Lower those price points and over deliver. So we see that pretty consistently across the board. I see it in some stuff outside of ClickBank as well. I think there's a lot of different ways to do that, whether it's digital and sell physical products in the back end, whether it's Cody Bramlett's buy two, get four free kind of model. He has that with a berberine offer. If you're an affiliate, you want to test it out, I'd go test it out. It's on ClickBank right now. Look at that. Never stop selling, right? But I think that's huge, and I'll just even put a plug for that, because berberine is commoditized, but it's commoditized with really good effects for blood sugar. You don't have to sell people on berberine. You have to sell them on, this is good berberine and a great deal. That's a lot bigger of a market. It's a lot more valuable of a market. You just have to have the lower entry point. So I think there's a lot of different ways to go after that, but I think there's something to be said that people are willing and still willing to spend money. You just have to ask a little bit less up front, over deliver, and know that sale's going to come if you build it properly. And I would tell you, Hormozi's a really good example of it. And granted, there's a lot more going on with that. I'm not going to materialize it down to just that. But even he is leading with, again, a much lower ticket price. So that's one thing that I'd really see as a trend that people should be focusing on, and we see working. The other thing I was going to say is, we have this trust economy. So I want to buy trust at a lower price point. The other thing is, we do want to trust, and we still trust people. So there's been a lot of stuff going on, and I think, unfortunately, ClickBank had found out that there was a lot of, we had some people that were running some ads that we didn't really want, and they involved a lot of deep fake celebrity stuff. We now removed that stuff. We're actively really making sure none of that's on our platform. But what's interesting is we could retroactively go back and look and see some of the results of products that are doing this, and they were very, very good. Now, they're not doing good things. This is not saying go do celebrity deepfakes. That's a bad idea, and there's a lot of reasons why it's a bad idea. But what it does tell me is people still really, really trust celebrities. They want to trust somebody. They want to trust a person, not an entity. We've lost failure of entities. People don't trust entities, but they still trust individuals. So I would say, if you're looking to up-level your marketing, find the credible person that people want to trust and make them really credible, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a celebrity. It's the time for athletes. And we've seen this in other products. Like, I would look at the alcohol markets, the marijuana markets, and the snack food markets. What do they have? What have fast food places been doing? A crap ton. They'll go, and I think I just saw like Wendy's had like a Cardi B box, or they had like, like the celebrities that create their little, oh, here's my little thing. And I bring up THC, it's relatively unbranded, but you see these huge brands grab celebrities and they grow up, whether it's celebrities giving their own crappy garbage alcohol. 90% of people don't have a palate, but they care about feeling connected to somebody they trust or they have an affinity for. That type of marketing has actually gone up. It's always good, but it's actually increased because of the lack of institutional trust that exists. So I'd be looking at, where can I find a doctor with a social presence? Not a huge one. And go and pitch them. Guess what? We could take your expertise, your spokespersonness with our marketing engines and give you everything you want, which is even more authority, right? And I will even go back, whether it's Huberman or anything, people want to trust that person. Go find them, pair them with your offer, and I think you could really get substantial growth, especially if you're still doing the same direct response stuff. Great, do that, supercharge that by getting somebody that people want to trust and a high authority individual. I think that's really going to be the ways that we see a lot of stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's huge. I was
I
just
could take more water, all these hot takes.
Please, please. I mean, it's so good. You are like a wealth of knowledge. I'm very, very appreciative of this. And like you were saying, like the first time we even met was when we were talking to Steve Gunn, and one of Steve Gunn's businesses is a Tommy Chong CBD business, and they do incredibly well, and because they have a really, really great spokesperson. I mean, it works. I mean, they've got just like the prime deal on that one. Not all spokespeople are going to be good ones, so you have to be really cautious of that. I was talking to another one of our mutual clients about this recently, because when you're going into a spokesperson deal, you have to be aware of they're going to be seen to a lot of their friends and family, and they need to be okay with the marketing, or at least understand that the marketing is your job, and so on and so forth, so that you can continue your job and make the conversions you need. But I think what you're putting out there in terms of just the endorsement, the spokesperson, and the trust factors, because we are so overloaded with information. We're really competing on attention now, and it matters who you're giving your attention to, and where that information is coming from, and how you're going to absorb it and digest it. And I know Hermosi has been working on that for so long, that both of them put out so much great content. They're just all around great at brand building, and I think that's a lot of where the market's going again right now, is to focus a little bit more on the brand and the personality behind the brand. So people can relate to.
Yeah. I put it this way: brands are up for grab, right? If we lose institutional trust, that means it's the time to redefine brands, and it's a time to build them, especially building them in the era of new media. We are in the full-blown area where non-traditional media has overtaken traditional media substantially, which means it's a new landscape for brands to be built. And so many people might lament this, but I would tell you it's the opportunity, and the Hermosi's got it, to build new brands that will be affinity brands for a long time. One thing I'm going to add to on the getting the right spokesperson, and we actually did an episode with Steve as well on that whole experience, and where Tommy Chong and Chicha Chong, fantastic, and they've done really great with that, but also their failed spokesperson with a Mike Tyson offer, and why that didn't work. And we go back to, they want to trust, but what do they want to trust that celebrity with? So funny enough, depending how old you are, your opinion of Mike Tyson could be very, very different, right? We want to think of the old Iron Mike when he was knocking people out and he was one of the scariest human beings known to man. Unfortunately, that was a long time ago. The 80s are, as much as I don't want to admit it because I was born in them, a long time ago. So the real impression, the latter impression for what is now at this point over 30 years or 50 years, like over 30 years of Mike Tyson, has been kind of a figure that's bit broken. He's not really somebody that you would trust for health and fitness, right? He's a bit of a character and somebody you like to laugh at or sometimes cry at, right? Like, oh man, he had a lot of crappy things happen to him. And where he's more likable now than he was even back then, his like is not predicated on health and fitness. So they were selling a health and fitness product. It did not do well. You know what Mike Tyson's number one product, according to Steve, he told me? Mike's cannabis line. I bet if Mike Tyson had his own alcohol, people would be way more interested in that, because I would trust like Mike Tyson and what he drinks or what he smokes way more than his fitness regimen based on what I've seen over the way he's lived his life. So it's important to make sure you're pairing up your product with the right type of trust, because on the flip side, I'll tell you what, I would really trust Cheech and Chong's CBD recommendations. That's pretty much what they know best, right?
Yeah.
So just make sure you're pairing those two things up appropriately. I'll even give like George Clooney with Casamigos. George Clooney's so freaking cool, and I think of cool with him with a glass of something in his hand. And so if that happens to be tequila, damn it, I might be as cool and sexy as George Clooney if I could drink that tequila too, even though Casamigos is total shit. They make a ton of money, and it's really based on that idea. So I just think you want to make sure you're matching your spokesperson and your authority with the trust that people have in them, and make sure that flows through to your product.
Makes a ton of sense, because it's not just about like who they are and how big they are or were. It's what they're known for and what they're doing right now and what people see them as, because and who your ideal market sees them as, more than anything. So that's super important. Where would you suggest people even look for spokespeople? Like, have you had any support in kind of connecting people with joint ventures and spokesperson?
Yeah, so I have done that. One, actually, there's a really good advice. So most of the time I just meet people at events. So I'll give a couple of recommendations that I would put out there. But we did an episode with these two diamond level affiliates. It's Jem and Saeed, and it's really good. But they talk about how they find doctors and functional medicine doctors for their ads or for products that they make. And they have so I want to shout out their strategy. And go and listen if you want all the specifics on our podcast affiliate. But what they basically said is they'll go and try and find functional medicine doctors with an Instagram influence, like some level. They need to have like maybe 2,000 to 3,000 followers. So not huge, but they're trying, right? And then they have some sort of product, or putting content out about a very specific health issue, because you want them to be focused. They can't just be like, you really don't want, like, say it's a doctor that is like, I really love my dogs, and yeah, I happen to be a doctor, but look at my dogs. Well, no, I don't care about them unless they were selling pet products, right? And that's probably still not what you want from a trust and authority. So they need to be talking about something specific, and from there, it makes sense. They have some level of belief, they have some idea, but they obviously are not where they want to go, and they don't have a pathway to get there. At least it's not clear. That's an ideal person to bring in to find raw talent. Now, outside that, I think there's other opportunities. Say you want to go bigger. I think other areas are you'd go with influence, but I think you'll be hard pressed to go with, say, the standard influencers. So if you're going like Instagram, maybe even sometimes YouTube, you're getting into some realms where these people have a certain idea and ego. And I think there's a lot of other sponsorship deals and things that they're used to. And sometimes not all of them are actually built on trust. Now you can if you could find them, but I think that's always a challenge. You could obviously go and find, your 100,000 YouTube channel subscribers and go pair with them. I actually connected one that did really, really well with this. He had a really good audience. I was doing some research and he popped up on short form. He had some products already and some success, a really good social influence. So I paired him with some people that were able to build a supplement line and just create a bunch of added money into their business. But he was a content creator that was selling, sex advice, right? So really good idea to go do that, had good influence, was missing the products that you could bring. The other one I'd say is I would heavily focus on podcasters too, these content creators. They don't necessarily have a lot of paths to additional revenue outside of sponsorship, but they carry a substantial amount of influence and attention for the people that they're talking to. I know people are going to go with JRE, and obviously what Joe Rogan did for, say, like something like On It, and he does for a lot of products, but that could be held in a much smaller category. Their studies, Spotify released a bunch of studies when they were opening up their ad platform. The amount of people that have made a high ticket purchase made that high ticket purchase because of something they heard on a podcast is over 60%. It was 66% of survey people said they've made a large ticket purchase based on something they heard on a podcast. That's substantial. That's way more substantial than what you're hearing from influencers and YouTubers. Podcasts have a longer form. They have more of a conversation. It feels more personal. It feels less pressured. So going and partnering with some of those creators and influencers would be really, really impactful. We've actually seen some of this on ClickBank with an individual that I finally got connected to this year. I'm just going to shout out, thank you, Paul Counts, with a guy by the name of Tom Woods. He's a libertarian podcaster, but he creates a bunch bunch of libertarian content. He's got a really large following. And when you pair products with him, holy cow, his audience buys whatever he talks about. They trust him so much. So getting the right pairing for him, and he cares, like you can't just send anything his way, but that right pairing, it's a magical conversion breaker. And here's the thing, that's his audience that trusts him. What if you then took that, and there's more people like them, and used that for cold traffic and took that product, that idea, and him as the spokesperson with an audience that already has high affinity and scaled it. His audience gets bigger, but more importantly, you could market that in a very, very effective, impactful way. So that's kind of what I would look for, is kind of find those areas. The reason I bring up podcasts too is they're built purely on a brand sponsorship model and CPM model, which is aggregated through a lot of these hosting companies. But all I'll tell you is, like, just long story short, that model has been suffering for the last 2 years, and there's really been a struggle. So you're seeing a lot of these mid-tier podcasters that don't have access to a lot of other revenue see their revenue decreasing. So you could come in and really offer a lifeline where they're going to be, I would think, more open to doing something different, where sometimes with influencers you don't see that. Granted, don't ignore influencers. I'll do one other fun stat around influencers. From 2021 to 2023 surveys, this was, I think, I can't remember what the data source was. Pew Research. It was Pew Research, showed that 23 million Americans newly identified as being an influencer over that time frame. I think the amount of influencers notified, like, there's obviously a lot of tiers in the United States, is in the 236 million range as of 2023. I doubt that number has gone down that much, or if anything, it's definitely probably gone up. So you have a huge pool to draw from of individuals that are most likely in that tier where they're maybe making enough money. Like, I tell it's like YouTubers that are getting like 100,000 subscribers and they're pretty much just doing content with some sponsorships are only making like 6 figures a year. That's how much they're taking home. That's a prime opportunity for somebody who has tons of influence that just needs a marketing engine to go drive it. And you could bring a ton of value in their life, and you get something that is trust, affinity, and you could flow forward with it.
That's huge. That's huge, especially right now when, like, you know, ads and everything are costing more. You have to really keep up with, like, the variability and the changes in the platforms and all that kind of stuff. I mean, focusing a little bit more on, like, podcasters and influencers and all this is a really smart move to do in your marketing in general. What have you seen, like, you know, speaking of influencers, what have you seen, like, kind of change in the space, the affiliate marketing space, especially with the introduction to influencers? Like, are you seeing more positive results through, like, I know some people work with affiliate media buying or affiliate email lists, or, you know, influencer marketing. Like, which one are you seeing, like, some of the best results from for people, and why do you think that is?
Yeah, still paid media is your best for affiliates, and even email secondary. Influencers are great ROAS, but it is a very fractured and very grinding way to go out and build it. There's just no fast, easy way. So it's very effective, but it requires you to do a bunch of cold outreach, a bunch of pitching, a bunch of hoping people do it, and you could do really well, right? But it's a lot of work. You're going to have to spend a lot of time doing it. And that's where right now it's a very inefficient form of affiliates. Now, you might be able to get a big one, but a lot of that, it's almost like doing PR at a certain point. And the way I'd put it is a lot of it's built off that CPM model, right? So, and the other thing you have to understand, this is a psychological thing, and I learned this by going to some creator conferences and talking with influencers. What they offer for, like, what they say for a sponsored post is actually directly correlates with their pride and their ego, right? What I could say I charge matters to a lot of people. So you might not want to pay that CPM, or if you are, you're going to have to basically, it's going to be very like, hey, I'm going to spend a lot of money and trust that I'll get ROAS back. But that's where you say affiliates, they'll say no, right? They can't say an affiliate deal. They don't want to do performance-based because there's an ego that goes along with it. I'm not to say that's every single one of them, but it's a real thing you have to deal with. So for some people, that's just not an exciting form of affiliate to go with. I have to pay you for a sponsor post. I have to chase down, make sure you do it, make sure it fits within the terms, and I have to track, and sometimes attribution's a little bit fuzzy. So it could be tough. It's just a lot of inefficient work. There's great tools like creator.io Creator.co, so creator.co, I think is what it is. There's a lot of really good resources to help accelerate that. But at the end of the day, it just requires a lot of just very manual work. Paid media affiliates, there is no lever you could pull outside of, like, I'd say the only other one would be organic thought leaders, which very challenging to get into high leverage thought leaders, right? Like, you're just not getting in there unless you know somebody to get into that realm, and you're either paying a lot or, like I said, you know somebody and you're networking very well. That's still probably the best form of affiliate marketing, but it's the least accessible in my opinion. But paid media, you get somebody to take your offer and they could find a way to scale it. We've seen offers multiple times go from $0 or low amounts, there may be 5 figures a month, to hitting multiple millions a month within a matter of 60 to 90 days with paid media buying affiliates. Now, there's a lot of factors that go into that. You have to have an offer that is going to convert enough. It's a recipe of converting high enough and paying a high enough CPA to make affiliates make money, because it's not like an agency. They don't profit off your spend, they profit off that your CPA is higher than what they could acquire the customer for, and making sure that margin fits, as well as competing against everyone else that does that same thing. So it's a competitive world, but still is the best. Now, the other one I'll mention is email from a traffic source. That's obviously very good, but I feel like it's a very skilled thing. People will say email is dead. Email has gotten way more challenging in the affiliate space, and it's honestly just because people kind of they made a lot of mistakes around email. I was going to say stupid, but I'll just say they made a lot of mistakes. You got to a point where everyone was just copy and pasting swipes. Bad idea. Very, very bad. And what's now happened is, if you were copying and pasting swipes, essentially all the ESPs, particularly now being able to unleash AI, they could track and see as soon as somebody sends a swipe that's been sent to a bunch of other email lists, and the AI could recognize that's a third-party affiliate offer swipe. Guess what they're going to do? They're not going to deliver it. They're not going to. It's always going to end up in promos. They're going to put it in spam. They're going to not. You're going to run into issues. You'll get shadow banned, or you'll just get banned. Right? A lot of people running a lot of issues, where all of a sudden their deliverability and their open rates just went and shrunk to almost nothing. Well, that's just because, and then there's other updates that are happening, but to me, it was really that behavior. You have to be different. You have to create value. You have to lead with more value for these products and for email lists. And for the people I know that are doing very well for the clients, that's their strategy. They write custom swipes, they provide some level of value and content, and they're adjusting it for each one of their lists to keep the list healthy. So if you're doing that, email is still very, very effective. The thing that I would say is, write the emails people actually want to read, and you'll find that email could be good again, right? So there's my make email great again. So it's not going away anywhere. It's just, it changed. We kind of were... It was nice when it was copy and paste, but guess what? That stopped. So now we have to go back to being really good email marketers. And I'll tell you, some of our top affiliates in 2024 were email affiliates. They still were up there, and we're talking like the top of the top when it comes to affiliates. So it's still there, but that's kind of the order I'd go in when you're ranking that out. And then the rest we'll spend too much time on other things, but that'd be the core for those three.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I think especially what you were saying. The paid media and stuff. It's a good way to have that. You should have your internal team do it, but having affiliates do it as well, and not just being the number one. But also, the influencer marketing, when you are going into that, or email marketing, like, you really need to have a team to support you on that, the affiliate manager and influencer team, because that is a very hands-on experience to be, chasing people down and all that. So you have to be in a place where you're ready to bring on team, unless you want to be that person. I don't want to be that person for even myself. It's
Yeah.
a burn in the bum.
Yeah.
And then but like the email marketing too, like, you have to really get a good company, because if you're, or a person or whatever, because otherwise you're going to end up with a lot of AI, a lot of swipe files, and it's your reputation. In the end of the day, it's your company and reputation. Nobody's going to care about it as much as you. So it's always super important to pay attention to who's supporting those efforts, I'd say, right?
For sure. Yeah. Finding the right people, understand, like, if you're getting a list manager, how they're doing and managing that list is critical. And there's still great ones out there. I'm not saying there's bad ones. And even some that might have been struggling with it, I think they're still very good at email marketing. It's just, it kind of, listen, like, I get it. There was a period during the pandemic, it's just so easy. So why do the extra work when it's so easy? I can understand that. And it's just, and sometimes that might not be your skill set. You might never even learn to do that because you only knew the other way. But that way now with AI has essentially been broken. I just don't think you could copy and paste a swipe like and accept scale, like I think that's going to be less and less common, if ever work ever again.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that a really good example of that email marketing and who does a good job is again Steve Gunn. Like he makes a really good. He has an actual personality to Tommy Chong, and he writes it in a voice in a friendly and a fun and engaging way that keeps people opening it and excited. And that's a big reason. It's one of the many reasons they do very well is they have Gunn behind that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, yeah.
but there's also
I can't wait. The title of this episode to be Kyle and Michelle talk about Steve Gunn. Like, it's like
you might be worried about what we're saying. I don't know.
yeah. No, man. I love Steve. I have not seen him in a while. Shout out to Steve.
Good dude for sure. He works his butt off, man. He's one of the
He does.
it's never. There's very few people I've seen work nearly as intensely and well as Steve does. So he's
Yeah, he's great. He's great.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I know that you have shared just so many amazing tidbits about marketing and everything with us, and I am loving hearing all this. But there's other parts of your, history and your experience, and I just want to ask a couple more questions on. Is really like I know, team management wise, team building, and all of that. You've worked with customer support. You've led customer support teams. You've had some sales training and all of that. Working with retention teams and being a cold calling expert and just all around you've been on a lot of teams too. So you've seen what does and doesn't work, especially in the hiring process. So I'm curious why, what's one thing that you've seen is like a huge red flag that people make in the hiring process, bringing people into their company, whether it's contractor agency or full time. What would you say is one of the biggest mistakes you've seen?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake I see people make so consistently is your top salesman should not be your salesman manager. Does not, it might be, but it is like their performance at selling should by no means make you think they're an indicator for leadership. They're two very different skill sets and two different personalities. And I could tell you one of the reasons why it's such a mistake that people make is you now essentially hurt yourself in two ways. You just took your best salesperson and made them your worst manager. So they're going to tank the rest of the team's performance and you just lost theirs, right? Because they have to do all these other roles. And the reason for that is I don't think a lot of people realize that what makes somebody good at being a sales manager and managing a team of salespeople is totally different than what it takes to be really, really good as a hunter, right? It's odd because obviously humans hunted alone, but in sales, we tend to hunt individually. We hunt more like, I'm thinking a non-pack animal, like a huntsman spider, right? Versus actually being more like what you'd expect from a wolf pack, where you're going to do that as a group and a team. And that matters because if you just took a very individualistic person who focused on me, which is good for a salesperson. I want my salesperson to almost be possibly narcissistic in some way about what they're focused on. If I pair their wants with my needs, holy hell, they're going to go off and do a lot of great things for me. But they could be an absolute nightmare leading my team because they won't care about team. They'll care about self. And have you ever worked for somebody that cared about self more than the team? You probably thought that whoever that was your worst manager, the person you hated the most. And guess what? They probably hated being a manager. They did not like it. So this is when it goes back to, I think, one of these important skill sets of I think the best CEOs and people that run companies and entrepreneurs or business owners that truly are excellent, and not just that they're innovators or thought leaders, right? But they just really know how to run a company. They are fantastic at understanding their own personal strengths and the strengths of everybody on the team relative to the roles that they do. So that's really, really key and super important. I always like since we're getting close to football season, depending on when this airs, Bill Belichick is a really good example of this if you're a football fan. Not that you have to say if you like or hate Bill Belichick, or you want to keep your daughters away from him in their 20s. I understand that. I get that. One thing he did as a coach that was so impactful, and I look at this as a CEO, is he looked at players for the talent they had, like, and how he could place them into position of need, right? So he could take distressed assets, things and players that no one else wanted, and put them in position where all of a sudden they become stars or be a cog to do this one thing that they do better than everybody else. I'm not going to ask you to do more. Be the best at the one thing that you do, and I will make sure to build the rest of the team around that, right, for that moment in time. And I think that's where you have to look at your staff in the exact same way. So when you're hiring somebody that's going to manage sales or a sales team, don't get the best athlete, get the best coach who could teach, who's going to understand how to get the most out of the salesperson and manage a bunch of squirrely cats at the same time. That's a very different person. They're probably more cerebral. They're probably less the person that they can go out and do the sales. They have to have that ability to teach and understand it, right? Like, you can't earn the respect of your salesperson if you can't show that you could at least do their job, but you don't have to do it better than them. In fact, I could tell you I've talked with sales teams or worked with other people that could do the skill better than me, although I'm always pretty confident in my ability to do it. But I watch people that are better than me, and I told them, like, that's okay. I don't need to be better than you. I need you to be the best that you can. And then today, that's my job, right? I know enough to know how to make you better, and that's a very different skill set than somebody that might be your top salesperson. So you shift the questions you ask, right? It's more about like, hey, how do you get to understand people? If I was looking for a top salesman that I wanted to move into management, I would look at their sales style. Do they pitch and push? I don't want that for a sales meter. If they ask questions and you find that they are very adaptive in their sales style, they sell to the person in front of them, they ask a lot of questions, they're very introspective, they're probably your slower salespeople. They might not hit the top, but they're probably more consistent, but they're not going to hit the top. They might be somebody that just spends too much time with clients. That's the person I want for my sales manager, because they're going to spend a lot of time with the salesman. They're going to find out what makes them tick. That's probably how they learned how to persuade people, is through questions and through longer term influence. How am I going to get somebody that means a ton to my business and has a huge ego to do what I want? They have to understand that person. And oftentimes your top salesperson will never do that. So that's why you want to look for those different skill sets and ask those different questions. And it goes back to that big question of why. If you're stuck small talking with your employees, you're probably going to make bad hiring decisions. Get down to the deep level, know their strengths, know why those are their strengths, and then understand how that lines up with the actual job you're asking them to do. So I think it's just a big mistake I see all the time. And also, it's even it's one of the reasons is I would do sales training, right? And I found a lot of people that sucked at sales training is they came in and they would say, "This is how you sell it," and they'd only sell it one way, their way. That's what works. And then all they really would do is basically just fire people that didn't sell the way that they wanted them to, and or force people to uncomfortably sell, not in the way that they could, but the way that you tell them to. And you just have inefficient teams. And they'd always be like, "Oh, these people can't sell. Why can't they sell?" And I was like, no, they just don't sell like you do. They can sell. And so like one of my favorite sales exercises with people that are like resistant, especially in retention, even get people to pitch stuff that like, I'm not a salesman, because that was a big thing when I was in call centers. Like, I'm not here to be a salesman. It's like, shut up, you are. Everyone's a salesman. It's just you just don't know what you're selling yet. And so I used to always tell people, like, tell me about. I'd get them to explain a memory. Like, I need you to explain a good memory. So it was like, tell me your favorite Christmas present. Tell me one of your favorite memories with your parents. And the reason I would do that is when they would tell that story, you could capture their vocal tone, their eyes, their excitement, their authenticity, right? It unleashes the veil so you have trust. And from there, you draw that out and you start attaching that to sales, right? Now we're connecting it to a process. Because in reality, what do you need to sell something? You need to be able to drive trust. You need to be able to make sure that it seems authentic, and you need to be able to feel enthusiastic about it. So if I could get them to understand that through their own natural, organic ways to do it, now we could start connecting and improving and finding their sales process and their sales voice, not just the one that you know and you think works. So, and this is actually why I think AI as sales reps are going to kick the ass out of all of us human beings, because it does that every single time. It never asks what the best way is. It asks what the best way is for the person right in front of them. So we should take that and understand it when we look at who's going to hire our sales team or manage our sales team. It's people that look at the world that way versus those that are looking in, again, might be very successful at sales, but a much more linear path.
I love that. That's a huge distinction there that people I think often miss, because it's not just salespeople. It's how you manage teams in general and how you're relating to people. And thing that you've mentioned a couple times is it's just the way that you're relating to people and persuasion in general. They're basic human instincts for survival. and at the end of the day, those were utilized for our survival. Getting people like us, being part of a community, having the support of each other, and being able to sell whatever it is we need to sell, and speak to whatever it is we need to speak to help improve us. So at the end of the day, it's not about putting the person who is the number one at that one task. It's about putting the person who understands how to manage people and encourage and motivate them, who are already really experienced and loving that one thing they do. So all around, Kyle, like everything you've shared with us today has been absolutely amazing and incredible. Like I have learned so much from you, and I'm really grateful you took the time for this today. I'm curious, like I know you have the affiliated podcast. You mentioned a few of them for people to go back to. Steve Gunn's, of course, is really good. Everything Steve does in marketing wise is brilliant. Ayed and Jem, you mentioned for sponsorship, discussing sponsorship people. I know that you've done a few.
Great traffic too. They're big media buyers, so really good traffic conversations there too.
Okay, awesome. So traffic and media buying. Is there any other ones that you would like really suggest people, like what's like a big one you're like, go watch, or two?
Oh man, there's so many. It always depends on ones that you really like just kind of get into. I know one we did with Patrick Stiles. I still think about that all the time. It's a fantastic one with Vitalytics. The data he shares in there is like, and I always shared that more outside of that. We are super lucky because we were one of the first people to get some of that data on the podcast. So it was super exciting. So I love Patrick's. We just did one with Francisco recently, who was his journey of becoming a diamond affiliate is really, really awesome. He's a very inspiring person. It's actually this year, it's been our most watched episode too. So really, really good. So obviously a lot of other people agree with that one. I also was really preferential to an episode I did this year. I'm just thinking some recent ones with Lee Hare, or Lee Johnson. The Lees, I'm mixing them up, but Lee Johnson. And I've been calling back to some of the things that he said in there because it's just really, really impactful, particularly in times right now where people have had success and maybe you're finding things are getting harder. He has some great advice in that, as well as some really good media buying stuff. Man, there's a great episode with Tom Woods that we did recently. Tom Woods, he did a fantastic. Or Tom Bell. I'm mixing up Toms. No, Tom Bell. Sorry, Tom Bell. But he had some really great ideas on split testing. I'm trying to think. I know I'm going to miss one and offend somebody.
No offense.
Gosh, I don't know. There's so many in there. There's really
so many good ones.
Yeah, there's not. I mean, obviously, yours is great for any sort of things when it talks about hiring and team building. It's fantastic. You do a great job with that. I remember we went through some of the questions and how to get the right person. I think that was awesome. So I put it this way: there's always, if you just go through, we do a pretty good job giving an idea of what you're going to get in there. Check them out. And I guess if you really just wanted to had a question, you could always go into affiliated@clickbank.com and say, hey, I'm looking for this. What episode do you recommend? We do look at those. I should say Thomas looks at those, and I'll tell him, hey, if you ever see one, you could send them over to me, and then I'll be sure to give you recommendations on what other ones we might have.
So that's the email to connect with about the podcast is affiliated@clickbank.co. What would be the email to connect with you to discuss, affiliate offers and improve? Yeah, what would be your email?
First, KYLE.KOSTECHKA. Just do it real fast, so you'll have to. I hope you're listening to that on faster speed. At clickbank.com. So you can find me on Facebook, and I will probably not respond to you because I am not good at responding on Facebook Messenger. I might as well be a boomer, just shouting at my phone, hoping something will work or do anything. Email would be the best route to go with that. And there's also Telegram too, just at Kostechka if you find me out there. There is a possibility though that I might ignore you depending on how you start your message, because for those of you that use Telegram, it is scam city. It is, I think once a quarter I get bored and I'll just talk to one of these scammers for a bit, or AI bots or whatever. But most of the time just blocking, deleting. I actually accidentally did it to a real client one time. And I was like, I'm sorry, man, your message, because he used a different name on his Telegram. I was like, I look totally fake as hell. So yeah, I totally blocked you. So, but yeah, that was one time it happened. So just be aware of that. Don't make your comments like, hey, hello. That's probably not going to get you a response from me.
Hello, ... Frank, is that you?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Is this Mr. Kyle? That's my favorite. Yes, because people call me Mr. Kyle. Like, what is that? So, Yeah, all the time.
Oh man! All right, well, make sure that your podcast is linked below as well as your email address so people can, because we're gonna butcher your name some more here. So we'll make sure
Yeah.
everything is linked for y'all so you guys can connect with Kyle. Make sure that you work with him. Everything, he's incredibly knowledgeable. ClickBank is a wonderful platform to work with, and we are really grateful to have you here today. Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Michelle. It was great. Really appreciate you. I hope you have a wonderful day and look forward to doing it again.
Absolutely.